After a lifetime of silence, Keanu finally admits that the woman he lost years ago was the true love of his life. He recalls how fame, fear, and fate pulled them apart, but her memory stayed with him through every success and heartbreak. Now, with this confession, he honors the love he never stopped carrying and the what-if that shaped his entire life. The night everything changed. If you had seen him that night, you would have thought he had everything a man could want. But I remember the way his eyes kept drifting to the window, as if he was searching for a life he had left somewhere far behind the cameras and the lights. Keanu was sitting in a folding chair on the edge of a darkened movie set, rain machines hissing in the background, stunt bikes lined up like sleeping beasts. It was the late 90s, the kind of year when every studio wanted his face on their posters. He smiled when people walked past, nodded to every crew member, thanked every assistant by name. On the surface, he was calm, almost shy, wearing a simple black jacket instead of something flashy, sipping lukewarm coffee from a paper cup. But there was something in the way he rolled that cup between his hands, like a man holding a secret he wasn't ready to let go. We were shooting a night sequence downtown, a motorcycle chase through slick streets. The air smelled like gasoline, wet asphalt, and nervous excitement. Extras huddled under umbrellas, the director barked through a megaphone, and the stunt coordinator kept repeating, "We've only got 3 takes before the city shuts us down, people, let's move." Keanu had the option to use a double, but he had quietly said, "I'll do the ride. Just keep everyone safe, yeah." There was no ego in his voice, just a strange mix of courage and humility that made people trust him. That was the night he met her. She wasn't a star, not even close. Her name was Elena, a script supervisor with ink on her fingers and a notebook always pressed to her chest. She moved through the chaos like a quiet center of gravity, checking continuity, counting frames, tucking stray hair behind her ear whenever she got nervous. She had this habit of smiling at people when they thought no one was looking, at the exhausted camera assistant, at the extra shivering in the fake rain, even at the security guard half asleep by the barricades. Her kindness didn't shout, it whispered, and somehow that whisper reached him. They spoke for the first time because of a smudge of ink. "You've got a line missing," she said softly, holding out the script. "Page 72, the alley scene." Keanu took the pages from her, their fingers brushing for a second, electricity flashing through the simplest human contact. He glanced down, then up at her and gave that crooked, almost boyish half-smile. "Guess I should try reading the whole thing next time," he joked. She laughed, but her eyes lingered on him a moment too long, as if she had just recognized something fragile behind the famous face. Before they could say more, the assistant director yelled, "Lock it up, pictures up, let's go, people." The street was cleared, cameras rolled into position, and the stunt coordinator walked Keanu through the path. Accelerate at the light, dodge the parked car, slide near the stacked crates, stop on the mark. Easy on paper. Never easy at 2 a.m. on wet pavement. Engines roared to life. The rain machines thundered down artificial storms. Keanu slid his helmet on, visor up for the close shot, water beating on his lashes. He gave a quick nod to the crew, then almost unconsciously, his eyes searched the crowd until he saw Elena standing by a lamppost, hugging her notebook. For a second, they just looked at each other. No words, just that strange, weightless moment that sometimes comes before everything breaks. "Action!" He gunned the throttle. The bike shot forward, tires spitting water, the world turning into a blur of neon and shadows. He hit his first mark clean, then the second. Somewhere behind the roar of the engine, he heard the director shouting, "Beautiful, beautiful, keep going." Keanu leaned into the turn, the back tire sliding out just the way the stunt team had planned, a perfect controlled skid toward the crates. Then someone slipped. One of the younger crew members, running a little too fast to clear the shot, lost her footing on the wet ground and went down hard, right into the bike's path. Later, people would say it all happened in a second. But for Keanu, that 1 second stretched into something endless and silent. The kind of moment that demands who you really are. He could have tried to hold the line and hope the timing saved them both. Instead, he made a choice. He yanked the handlebars and kicked the back brake, twisting his entire body into a brutal sideways slide. Metal screamed against pavement. Sparks flew like a shower of furious stars. The bike spun out, missing the fallen crew member by inches. He hit the ground shoulder first, rolling across the street, helmet slamming against the curb. The cameras kept rolling. People started screaming. Someone yelled to cut. Someone else yelled for an ambulance. When everything stopped moving, he was lying on his back, chest heaving, rain and fake blood mixing on his face. His shoulder burned with a sharp, white-hot pain. Somewhere above him, lights bled into each other, too bright, too unreal. He pulled off the helmet, coughed, and the first words out of his mouth weren't about himself. "Is she okay?" he asked, voice rough. "The girl who fell, is she okay?" The crew member was shaken but alive, already being helped to the sidewalk. The stunt coordinator kept saying, "You're insane, man, that slide could have broken your neck." Keanu just nodded, blinking through the pain, eyes searching until he saw Alina pushing through the crowd, her notebook gone, her face pale. She knelt beside him, hand trembling as she touched his forehead to check for blood. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were not. "You could have died," she whispered. "Yeah," he answered, wincing as he tried to sit up. "But she didn't." There was a strange silence around them then, as if the city itself had paused to listen. Extras stared. Grips looked away, pretending to be busy, but everyone felt it, that mix of fear, relief, and sudden raw respect. It wasn't the slow-motion heroism of his movies. It was messy, painful, and real. The kind of courage that leaves bruises. At the hospital later, the doctor said his shoulder was badly bruised but not broken. He'd need rest, ice, and a brief break from the stunts. The studio was furious about the delay. Insurance calls were made. Schedules were rearranged. But in the quiet moments between x-rays and signatures, Alina stayed by his side, her notebook replaced with a cheap vending machine coffee she kept forgetting to drink. "You didn't have to do that," she said at one point, breaking the silence. "They have stunt doubles for a reason." He shrugged, winced, then smiled faintly. "If I'm going to pretend to be brave on screen, I should at least try off screen, don't you think?" "That wasn't pretending," she said. "That was something else." He looked at her then, really looked, not as another face on a crowded set, but as a person who had watched him risk everything without asking for applause. In her eyes he saw no hunger for fame, no trace of the usual Hollywood calculation. Just worry, just kindness, and something deeper he couldn't name yet. Over the next few days, the set changed in small but powerful ways. People were softer with each other. The stunt kid brought donuts for the whole team, still shaking when she thanked him for saving her life. The director, usually sharp-tongued, walked around with a gentler tone, catching himself before snapping at anyone. It was as if that one reckless, selfless slide had reminded everyone that under the costumes and contracts, they were human beings who could break. Alina and Keanu started sharing quiet conversations between takes. She told him about her father's little bookstore that had closed, about her dream of writing her own stories someday. He told her about growing up between cities, always moving, never really belonging anywhere, and how acting had become his strange way of looking for home. When she teased him about his old band, he laughed harder than I'd seen him laugh in years. There was an ease between them, a softness that cut through the noise of fame. But there was tension too, a different kind of suspense. The studio had noticed once again how audiences loved him in action roles, how they loved the myth of the quiet hero. A new script arrived on set, slid into his hands by his agent with a whispered, "This is the one, man, global release, franchise potential. You take this, your career goes to another planet." The catch, 8 months of filming overseas, back-to-back sequels already planned, no room for delays, no space for a quiet life. That same afternoon, Alina got a call from home. Her younger brother had been in trouble again, slipping deeper into a dangerous crowd. Their mother was exhausted, ready to give up. Alina stood outside the soundstage, clutching her phone, listening to tears on the other end of the line. For the first time since I'd known her, her usual calm cracked. She needed to be there for her family, but walking away from the job might mean losing the chance to ever move up, to ever write, to ever escape the instability that had chased them for years. That night the set was nearly empty when Keanu found her sitting alone on a crate, the city stretching out in flickering lights behind her. His shoulder was still wrapped, every movement stiff, but his voice was gentle. "You look like you're standing on the edge of something," he said. She smiled sadly. "Funny, I was going to say the same about you." In his pocket, his phone buzzed again and again. His agent, the studio, the director, all waiting for his answer about the massive new film. In her hand, her phone screen glowed with a message from her mother. "Please, Alina, I can't do this without you." They sat there for a long time without speaking, two people who had found something rare in the chaos, now standing at a crossroads neither of them had planned for. The rain had stopped, but the ground was still wet, reflecting the lights like a broken mirror. Finally, Keanu took a breath, turned to her and said quietly, "If I tell you what I really want, I'm not sure the world is going to like my answer." Alina looked up, eyes shining, as if she already knew what that meant. But before either of them could say another word, his phone started ringing again. Louder this time, the studio name flashing on the screen, the call that could change everything. He stared at the phone, then at her, caught between the life he had built and the life he was just beginning to imagine. And in that fragile, electric moment, as thunder rolled in the distance and the city hummed beneath them, Keanu had to make a choice that would shape the rest of his life, and the love he was only just beginning to understand. Promises in the rain. The phone kept ringing in his hand, while the night wrapped around them like a thin, humming curtain of city light and leftover rain. Keanu stared at the glowing screen, then at Alina sitting beside him on the crate, her fingers laced so tightly together her knuckles had turned white. He finally answered. "Yeah, I'm here," he said, voice low. The studio executive came through the speaker like a storm. Numbers, release dates, global campaigns. "This is the franchise we talked about, Keanu. You sign now, we move fast. Action, sci-fi, the whole world watching. Are you in or not?" His shoulder throbbed under the bandage. He glanced at Alina. She pretended to study the pavement, but her eyes kept stealing quick, nervous looks at him, like she already knew this decision would pull him away. "I need some time off first," he said. "A few weeks, not on a set, just time to breathe." On the other end there was a scoff. "You'll breathe when you retire. Cameras are waiting. We don't get moments like this twice. You owe it to your fans." He swallowed. The word "owe" sat heavy in his chest. He owed the crew that trusted him, the people who bought tickets, the kid he used to be who just wanted a chance. But then he thought of the stunt kid he'd nearly crashed into, of Alina's quiet courage, of how close everything had come to breaking. "I owe it to myself not to turn into someone I don't recognize," he said softly. There was a pause, then the voice softened just enough to sound like compromise. "2 weeks, no more. You say yes now and you get your little break. Then we own your calendar." Keanu's jaw tightened. 2 weeks was nothing. But he also knew how many people would get work if he said yes, how many careers rose and fell around decisions like this. He looked back at Alina, searching her face for some kind of answer. She gave him a tiny, encouraging nod, as if to say, "Whatever you choose, choose it fully." He took a breath. "All right," he said, "I'm in." When he hung up, the street felt colder. "So," Alina said, trying to sound light, "you're going to space or the future or whatever they have planned." He laughed once. Explosions, wires, lots of running in slow motion, probably. "Very profound," she teased, but there was a flicker of sadness behind her smile. He noticed, "What about you? You looked like you were on the edge of something, too." She hesitated, eyes dropping to the cracked asphalt. "My brother called. He's not doing well. He's been trying to get clean, but he relapsed. My mom's exhausted. They need me back home." "You're thinking of leaving the show," he said quietly. She nodded. "If I go now, I might lose my spot. There are 100 people who want this job, but if I stay, I'm afraid I'll lose him." The words came out thin and raw. Keanu didn't jump in with solutions or offers of money. He just listened. That in itself was a kind of respect. "I grew up watching my mom fight for us," she continued. "She never walked away, even when it cost her everything. I don't know how to be the kind of person who chooses a career over family." He leaned back against the crate, staring at the glow of a distant billboard. "On set, it's easy," he said. "They hand you pages that tell you what the brave thing is. In real life, it's always blurry." She gave a small, humorless laugh. "So what do you do?" "Try not to lie to myself," he answered, "and then live with whatever that truth costs." The next few days, the set became a strange mix of farewell and celebration. Keanu's shoulder kept him from the heaviest stunts, so he spent more time talking with the crew, checking on the girl he'd nearly hit, walking around with that slow, thoughtful step that made people feel seen. He brought coffee to the grips on the coldest mornings. He signed autographs for extras without the usual rush. When someone apologized for being in his way, he shook his head and said, "We're all in this together." "No one's in my way." Elena watched all of it, filing away details the way writers do, even if she still didn't dare call herself one. She made continuity notes, fixed mistakes in the dialogue, gently corrected a new assistant who kept mixing up props. One evening, when the schedule loosened, the stunt coordinator rolled a smaller bike onto the empty backlot and tossed Keanu the keys. "You're benched," he said, "but she's not." Elena blinked. "Excuse me." Keanu grinned. "Ever been on a bike?" "Only in my nightmares," she replied, but her eyes lit up with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "Come on," he said, patting the seat behind him. "Slow lap. I promise not to make you famous for the wrong reason." She hesitated, then swung a leg over, arms wrapping instinctively around his waist. The engine rumbled to life under them, a low growl that vibrated through their bones. As they rolled forward between the dark outlines of fake buildings and set pieces, her laughter echoed across the lot, nervous at first, then freer, then bright and unguarded. "You're going like 2 miles an hour," she shouted over the engine. "3," he corrected, "but I can go slower if you want." "Don't you dare," she shot back, voice daring and breathless. They circled the lot twice. The wind tugged her hair loose. She leaned against his back, trusting him more with each turn. For a moment the world shrank to just the hum of the bike, the smell of gasoline and rain, the warmth of someone else's heartbeat within reach. It was nothing like the violent, choreographed action of their work. It was smaller, simpler, and somehow far more dangerous. When they finally coasted to a stop, she slid off, cheeks flushed. "Okay," she said, trying to sound casual. "That was not terrible." "High praise," he replied. "Maybe someday I'll earn almost fun." She looked at him then, head tilted, studying him like a scene she didn't want to rush. "You already did," she said quietly. They didn't kiss, but there was a moment when both of them almost stepped forward at the same time. Then both stepped back, smiling awkwardly, as if afraid that one more inch might change everything. On the last day of shooting, the crew gathered for a rushed wrap party in a half-lit warehouse near the studio. There was cheap music, cheaper pizza, and the kind of tired joy that only comes after months of shared pressure. People gave speeches. The director thanked everyone, even choked up for a second when he mentioned the near accident. The stunt kid raised a soda can in Keanu's direction and said, "To the guy who reminded me that no movie's worth a human life." Keanu slipped out early, overwhelmed by the noise, pockets full of folded call sheets people had asked him to sign. Outside, the air was cool and damp. Elena caught up to him near the gate, hugging a small stack of papers to her chest. "I'm leaving for home in the morning," she said, "so I guess this is goodbye." He felt that word hit harder than he expected. "How long will you be gone?" "I don't know," she admitted. "Long enough to get my brother back, I hope." He nodded slowly. "The new film starts next month. They're flying me out, long shoot, different continents. I probably won't be back for a while." They stood there, two paths splitting away from each other under a street lamp's tired glow. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a small pen. "Then we make a deal," he said. "You write something, anything, a page, a scene, a story, and when I'm done shooting, you show it to me. I'll find you, wherever you are." "You're very confident in your ability to use a map," she said, but her voice shook a little. "I'm very confident in my ability to keep a promise," he replied. She looked at the pages in her hands, her secret sketches of scenes and fragments of dialogue she'd been too shy to share, and then back at him. Slowly, she tore one page free, folded it carefully, and slipped it into the inside pocket of his jacket. "It's not much," she said. "Just a moment. A man on a motorcycle who has to decide whether he cares more about his life or someone else's. Sound familiar?" He smiled, blinking more than usual. "I'll read it on the plane," he said, "and when I come back, maybe we'll write the next part together." They agreed to meet at a little all-night diner 2 blocks from the studio at 7 the next morning. Just coffee, Alina said, before we both disappear into whatever's next. 7, he repeated, I'll be there. They parted with a long look and a soft goodbye. No kiss, no big declarations, just a fragile glowing expectation that this was the beginning of something the world hadn't written for them. That night around 3 in the morning, Alina's phone exploded with calls and messages. Her brother had been picked up again, this time worse, this time with damage that couldn't be ignored. Her mother was at the hospital, voice breaking with fear. Alina grabbed a small bag, tossed in clothes without thinking, and raced for the last bus out of the city, heart pounding, mind already planning doctors, lawyers, rehab, endless conversations. In the rush, she scribbled a quick note on a napkin. I'm sorry, family emergency. I'll find you. Please don't forget about the story, and handed it to a sleepy front desk guard at the studio, begging him to pass it on in the morning. The bus pulled away before the sun rose, carrying her toward a town that needed her more than Hollywood ever would. At 7 o'clock sharp, Keanu sat in a corner booth at the diner, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that kept going cold while he waited. He watched the door every time it opened. Crew members came in, truckers, a couple arguing gently over pancakes. The minutes crawled by. He brushed his fingers over the folded page in his jacket, the one she'd left him. He wanted to read it right there, but some part of him wanted to hear her voice telling it first. By 8:30, the waitress refilled his cup for the 3rd time and said kindly, She's not coming, is she? He forced a smile. Maybe she just got held up. At 9, his driver texted that they were late for the airport. Keanu stood up slowly, staring at the empty doorway one last time. Then he left cash on the table, shrugged on his jacket, and walked out into the pale morning. As the door swung shut behind him, a small folded napkin slipped unnoticed from his jacket to the floor, landing half hidden under the table. No one saw the hurried handwriting, the apology, the promise. By the time the bus carrying Alina pulled into her hometown, and the plane carrying Keanu lifted through the clouds, the only thing left between them was a story neither of them had gotten the chance to finish, and a silence that would stretch much longer than either of them imagined. The story that wouldn't let go. The first time Keanu saw her name again, years had already slipped past like scenes cut from a film. He had crossed continents, jumped off burning sets, learned new fight choreography until his muscles screamed. The movies got bigger, the explosions louder. People cheered his stunts, copied his haircuts, quoted his lines. On red carpets he smiled and waved, always a little distant, always a little surprised that anyone still cared. But in hotel rooms at 3 a.m., when the makeup was gone and the suit was on a hanger, he would sit by the window with the city lights below and take out a single sheet of paper, creased, soft at the edges, carefully guarded through airports and relocations. Alina's page. He had read it so many times he could have recited it from memory. A nameless man on a motorcycle, seeing someone fall in front of him, choosing the skid and the pain instead of the easy path, not because he wanted to be a hero, but because he couldn't live with himself any other way. The writing was simple, clear, honest. There were margins filled with tiny notes. What if he's more scared of being selfish than of crashing? Kindness equals dangerous choice. He had tried to get in touch with her more times than he admitted to anyone. He called the production office where they'd met. She'd left, no forwarding address. He asked around quietly among script supervisors and assistant directors. People remembered her smile, her calm, her notebook. She went home for family stuff, one grip said. Heard it got rough, don't know if she's coming back. Life rushed over that gap like water over a stone. There were other films, other coworkers, other stories. There were personal storms he kept private, losses and aches that the world would only ever see as faint lines on his face. Through all of it, that page stayed with him, a small, stubborn proof that somewhere out there was someone who had seen past the posters and found a human being worth writing about. One night, after a long day of press for yet another blockbuster, he came back to his hotel room too wired to sleep. He flipped through channels in the dark, the blue glow washing over him. Sitcom reruns, reality shows, sports highlights. His thumb hovered over the remote when a tiny title at the bottom of the screen caught his eye. Small Town Ghosts, independent feature writer Alina Ramos. He froze. The image on the screen was grainy, low budget, no famous faces. A woman in a worn hoodie stood outside a shuttered bookstore, key trembling in her hand. The store sign was faded, the letters peeling. The camera lingered on her expression, a mix of fear, hope, and exhaustion. He almost changed the channel out of habit. Then he thought of her notebook, of the way she'd walked through chaos with quiet purpose. He set the remote down and let the story pull him in. It wasn't a horror movie, not really. It was about a family weighed down by addiction and debt, trying to keep a small business alive in a town that had stopped believing in itself. The ghosts in the title weren't monsters. They were memories, regrets, the people they'd lost along the way. The dialogue was simple, the pacing gentle, but every line felt true. There were details only someone who had lived it could have written. The way a mother's voice changes when she lies about being okay, the way a brother laughs too loud when he's hiding something, the thin, sharp hope when someone says, "This time I'll get clean. I promise." Halfway through, a character on screen said, "Kindness is the bravest stunt," and the words hit Keanu like a punch. That had been scrawled in the margin of the page in his pocket, circled 3 times. When the movie ended, he sat perfectly still, staring at the credits as if his life depended on it. And there it was, small and easy to miss. Written by Elena Ramos, dedicated to Daniel, who finally found peace. He didn't know who Daniel was, but he could guess. His chest tightened. She had been carrying a whole world on her shoulders, and he had been halfway across the planet pretending to outrun bullets in slow motion. The next morning, his assistant found him unusually awake and restless. "I need a favor," he said, quietly. Within a week, he had an invitation to a small independent film festival in a worn-down theater 2 hours outside the city. "We can drive," he insisted. "No extra press, no announcements. I just want to watch some movies." Security raised an eyebrow but nodded. He went in a plain jacket, a cap pulled low, no entourage except one trusted friend who knew better than to ask too many questions. The theater lobby smelled like popcorn and old carpet. Film posters lined the walls, most printed on cheap paper, corners already curling. Inside, the seats were half full. Students, older couples, a few local filmmakers. No one expected to see a global action star slump into a middle row and fold himself into the chair, eyes hungry and uncertain. The festival director stood before the dimming screen, microphone squealing. "Our next film is Small Town Ghosts, written by a remarkable voice who couldn't be with us tonight but sends her love. Please stay after for a reading of her letter." "She's not here," Keanu whispered, a thread of disappointment pulling at him. But then the film started, and he forgot to breathe. Watching it with strangers made it hit even harder. People around him sniffed quietly, laughed at small jokes, shifted when the story got too close to their own lives. There was a scene where the brother character sat in a rehab center cafeteria, hands shaking, and said, "I don't need you to save me. I just need to believe you won't disappear when I fall." It sounded like a conversation that someone somewhere hadn't had in time. When the credits rolled, there was a soft wave of applause, polite but sincere. The lights brightened a little. The festival director came back up, holding a piece of paper. "Since Elena couldn't be here," he said, "she sent us a short letter to share with you all." Keanu's grip on the armrest tightened. "To anyone who watched this film," the director read, "thank you for giving my little story 2 hours of your life. I wrote it because I grew up in a house where second chances were the only currency we had, and because I watched someone I love fight so hard against a darkness that most people only talk about in whispers." The theater grew quiet, the kind of quiet that means people have stopped thinking about their phones. "There was a time," the director continued, "when I worked on big sets around big faces. I watched amazing crews build worlds out of wood and paint and light. One night I saw a man do something that wasn't in any script. He risked all of it, fame, work, even his body, because a stranger had slipped in front of his bike. No cameras were meant to be rolling on that part. It was messy and real and over in seconds. Most people forgot. I didn't." Keanu's throat went dry. "That night taught me something I've been trying to live by ever since. Real courage is almost always quiet. It doesn't trend. It doesn't always get you what you want, but it leaves a mark on the people who see it." This film is for my brother who didn't get the ending I prayed for, and for that quiet man on the motorcycle who reminded me that there are still people in this world who will slide into the fire just to make sure someone else walks away. The director paused, voice catching for a second, then finished softly. If you're fighting something heavy right now, I hope this story makes you feel less alone. If you've ever been saved by someone who didn't have to save you, I hope you tell them before it's too late. Love, Elena. The room stayed silent long after he folded the paper. People wiped their eyes, glanced at each other with that shy, vulnerable look humans get when they've all felt the same thing at the same time. Keanu stood up too fast, bumping his knee on the seat in front of him. His friend touched his arm. "You okay?" He nodded, but his eyes were bright. "I need some air," he murmured, already moving toward the exit. In the narrow hallway outside the auditorium, the noise of the world rushed back. Soft chatter, the popcorn machine, the buzz of old lights. He leaned against the wall and closed his eyes, letting the words of her letter replay in his mind. That quiet man on the motorcycle. She remembered. She had seen him. And somewhere between then and now, she had lost a brother and still found the strength to turn that pain into something that could help strangers. He felt both humbled and ashamed. He had spent years thinking of her as the girl who hadn't shown up at the diner, the almost something that never became real. Now he saw the other side, the sister running toward a phone call at 3 in the morning, the daughter holding a family together with both hands until her fingers bled. A soft ding broke through his thoughts. The elevator at the end of the hallway slid open with a tired groan. He almost didn't look. Why would he? She wasn't supposed to be here. But habit or hope made him glance up. A woman stepped out, carrying a worn leather bag and a stack of papers pressed to her chest. Her hair was shorter than he remembered, threaded with a few strands of silver that only made her look more alive. There were new lines around her eyes, the kind that come from both laughter and grief. She walked with the same quiet focus, as if every step had a purpose. She handed her festival pass to a volunteer with an apologetic smile. "I'm late. I got lost on the highway," she said. "Did I miss the screening?" The volunteer shook his head. "You missed it by about 5 minutes," he said. "But your letter, everyone loved it." She winced, then laughed softly. "Of course, the one time I decide to let my words speak for me." Her voice hit him like a memory. She turned, adjusting the strap of her bag, and that was when she saw him. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. The noise of the festival seemed to fade into a distant hum. His cap, his jacket, the years between them, none of it mattered. Her eyes widened, filling first with shock, then with something deeper, something older. Recognition, guilt, relief, maybe even that same fragile hope from a rain-soaked set so long ago. He straightened slowly, not daring to believe he wasn't dreaming. "Elena," he said, her name tasting like something he'd been trying not to say out loud for years. She whispered his name back, as if afraid it might disappear if she said it too loudly. And there they were, 3 steps apart in a narrow theater hallway, with a decade of pain, missed chances, and unwritten pages hanging in the air between them, and no clear idea how to bridge the distance.